Something I always found interesting about friends and friendships in the millennial era, even baby boomers and Gen Xers are falling for this shit now, and they're typically doing this simple shit and are throwing around titles as if they mean something when in fact they don't. I talked about this when I talked about the word loyalty. The word loyalty is nothing more than a tattoo that people say and use, but they don't really know the actual meaning to it. The same thing goes for friend. They just, friend or friendship, they basically throw around the word friend meaninglessly and they so overly use, in other words, that it's fucking ridiculous. It's like, it's pointless. This is Vedic Ghosts. Like, subscribe, and share. The problem with using the word friend in this day and age is it's overused. And I think that's because of female agreeability and wanting to be accepted by other people. And the sad part about that, there's no woman that actually escapes this. There's no woman that's different from this, that don't escape this whole entire thing. Even men are starting to fall into this trap of wanting to be acceptance and agreeability, sadly. And the sad part about that is they're willing to lower their standards to let people in who normally they wouldn't refer to or call themselves their friends. I'm typically very picky about who I refer to as my friend. I don't really call people my friend. A good example of that was a long time ago. I had a person who was teaching me another language. They referred to me as their friend. Now, our interactions were okay, but I wouldn't really call her my friend. And what I've noticed is typically it's women who throw around this title more so than men. And it's sad. Like, typically women will throw around this title way more than men will. And she basically called me her friend, and she introduced me as her friend. And the sad part about that, our interactions wasn't friendly. Our interactions, she was a condescending bitch, basically. But she referred to herself as my friend. And typically, don't get me wrong, I have condescending friends, but that's because they deserved it and earned that title to be condescending, sadly. She never earned that title with me. She basically came from a cultural place of disposition. So it's one of those things where it was a cultural thing forced onto me. Now all of a sudden we're friends. And the sad part about that is it was the fact that because she was who she was, or she was Moroccan, that she believed that she was better than, or, better than me. Sadly, she kept forgetting that I'm Afro-Latino and Jamaican. So the sad part about that is it makes for a very, very interesting dynamic when it comes to quote unquote friendships. Because typically, if you're not really calling that person your friend, and another thing that I've actually noticed that I wanted to mention, if a person has to ask you, do you consider them your friend? They obviously know you're not friends. They obviously know they don't fit into the friend dynamic, sadly. And there's not too many people who actually fit into the friend dynamic. And people will say to me, well, Tico, you hate women, so you don't have any female friends. I have a shit ton of female friends. I have more female friends than I have male friends, sadly. And that's the funniest thing in the world. The sad part about that is they earned that friend title. They didn't just come in and proclaim themselves as my friend. It's kind of like the men in the manosphere that proclaim themselves as alpha males, or people who think they're alphas, or people who proclaim all these massive, crazy, cool titles. Is basically what it is, basically. It's nothing more than that. They didn't really earn it. They just call themselves that shit for all intents and purposes. And this is the sad reality of the day. We got a bunch of people running around proclaiming something that they're not, just so they can feel better about how they underlyingly feel about that person. You're nothing more than a stepping stone or a footstool to that person, basically. You would never really be their friend, sadly. And the sad part about that is how they convolutedly come up with the reasoning behind it is basically, it's female nature, basically. So what ends up happening is, like I said, women are agreeable. and women don't want people to be upset with them. This is typically why women handle things the way that they do. They'll say, if they don't have a boyfriend, they'll tell a man that they have a boyfriend. That way, they don't have to worry about the fallout. They basically lied, so they don't have to worry about the fallout. So they will lie to your face to smooth out things, especially if you have some value to them for all intents and purposes. So you'll be their quote-unquote friend if you supply value to them. You'll be their bestie if you supply value to them. You'll be their go-to person if you supply value to them. The sad part about that is, if you're friends, do you get any value out of that friendship? And if the answer is no, you need to get rid of that friendship, sadly. Because I've got a lot of people who refer to themselves as friends, but I get no value from that friendship, sadly. And it's sad to watch. But that's another video we'll talk about.